In years following the First World War, unrest, discontent, and instability were again seen in the world. In many countries, democratic governments collapsed, and centralized government and military strength would solve problems before the nation's government and military strength would solve problems before the nations took roots. Dictatorship was established in Italy, Germany, and Spain. In the First World War, a hope of acquiring the Italian-speaking provinces under Austria and Germany was not fulfilled by the peace treaty. At the same time, the wartime debit, the industrial and trade recession, and the rising unemployment added to the discontent of the Italian people. This discontent took the form of strikes and revolts. Taking advantage of growing discontent of the fascist party, Benito Mussolini captured power in 1922. A journalist and teacher, Mussolini entered politics after the First World War. He claimed that he would make good the economic damages of Italy and bring her prestige and a bright future. Mussolini organized a disciplined party. The strength and unity of the party was symbolized by a bunch of wooden rods with an axe in the middle. Aggressive nationalism, opposition to communism, faith in the bright future of Italy was the line of thinking of Mussolini's fascist party. Mussolini concentrated all the power in his hand. The king was made only the titular head of the state. He imposed severe censorship on the newspapers so that they would not propagate against him. The workers' unions were banned. From Turkey, he acquired islands in the Aegean Sea and established naval bases there. He acquired the port of Fiume in 1924. Mussolini invaded Ethiopia in the African continent. Italy annexed Ethiopia in 1936 and thus became an aggressive nation. Now we'll see the rise of Nazism in Germany. The same economic crisis and anarchy were also responsible for the rise of Nazism in Germany. The term Nazi stood for National Socialist Party. Adolf Hitler was the founder of this party. In November 1918, a republican government was established in Germany soon after the emperor abdicated. The new constitution of the state was adopted at Weimar. It came to be known as the Weimar Republic. The government failed to improve the deteriorating economic conditions and thereby the economic crisis continued to increase. The people of Germany were greatly discontented. Germany's economic development suffered due to world depression of 1929. The wheels of industry, business and trade came to a halt. The banks collapsed and the life saving of the people were wiped off. The Weimar government failed to find a way out of this unpleasant situation. Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Nazi party, capitalized on his extremely hopeless situation. The ideology of Hitler is known as Nazism. His autobiography, The Mein Kampf, that is My Struggle, shows clearly the principles of Nazism. Hitler believed that the Germans were Nordic, that is Aryan, by race, and they had the capacity and the moral right to rule over the world. The hatred of the Jews and discrimination against them was a basic principle of Nazism. Nazism was opposed to communism. Hitler also opposed democracy. Militarism was propounded by the Nazis. Hitler founded Nazism. He organized a strong party. He raised quasi-military wings of the youth called stormtroopers. The swastika was the symbol of the Nazis. Between 1928 and 1932, the Nazi party increased its electoral strength. In 1934, Hitler assumed the presidency of Germany along with chancellorship. Hitler became the dictator of Germany. The administration was packed with the Nazis loyal to Hitler himself. By means of Gestapo and underground organization, all opposition was cruelly suppressed. After consolidating his position in Germany, Hitler started his aggressive policy in Europe. He expanded the navy and the army and raised the air force. The Nazi party terrorized the people and got majority. Tsar was incorporated in Germany. He adopted the policy of anti-communism and in 1937 signed a pact with Italy and Japan. This is known as the Berlin-Rome-Tokyo axis. His position. Then, dictatorship in Turkey. In the First World War, Turkey had joined hands with Germany against the Allies. She was defeated and by the Treaty of Sevres was deprived of large parts of her territorial possessions. On this background, Kemal Pasha, an ordinary officer in the army, raised a rebellion. He refused to accept humiliating conditions imposed upon the Turkey, abolished the Sultanate and declared Turkey a republic. Demonstrating his military strength, he compelled the Allied powers to revise the earlier treaty and sign a new one in 1923, whereby he regained important territory. Though Kemal Pasha was a dictator, his program was based on democracy, nationalism and secularism. His dictatorship was indeed a benevolent dictatorship. His countrymen affectionately called him Ataturk, that is father of Turks. The military dictatorship in Japan. Japan is a country of small islands. Commodore Perry of America visited Japan in 1853 and Japan came in contact with the Western nations. As a result, Japan underwent enormous industrial development. Out of a desire for imperial expansion, Japan raised the issue of Chinese domination of Korea. By defeating China in the battle, Japan took control of Korea through Shimonoseki Treaty. Obviously, Japan got many of its demands satisfied at the negotiations of 1919. However, America couldn't tolerate the increasing domination of Japan. In the year 1921, the American President Harding convened the Washington meeting for bringing restrictions on the naval forces. As a result, there began a process of undermining the power of the Japanese Navy. All the advantages allowed to Japan after the First World War were withdrawn. Japan was unable to avoid the impact of the Great Depression. Shinto, a military outfit in Japan, took advantage of the international crisis and converted the national policy into aggressive one. Now, Japanese militarism and Manchuria. The political and economic interests of Japan were rooted quite deep in Manchuria. But Japan brought Manchuria under his command in 1932 despite a strong opposition from China, and thus the Japanese invasion of Manchuria motivated militarism. Then, the rise of military dictatorship. The unstable politics of the political parties and corruption raked by the henchmen of Zaibatsu caused a counter-reaction. As a result, the strength of military grew fast. Then, the nationalist philosophy of the Japanese military. The people of Japan had sympathy for the military, which had been quite successful. Kitaiki, Gonda Saiku, and Okawa Sumei were the chief originators of this philosophy. All of them had adopted military imperialism and extreme nationalism. The climax of Japanese militarism was its entry into the Second World War. On 18 October 1941, the reins of Japan came into the hands of General Tojo. Japan couldn't put up with the economic sanctions imposed by America. Out of frustration, Japan led an air attack on Pearl Harbor, the naval center of America, and the attack caused a huge loss of America. Thus, in the conflict between the political parties and the military, the latter was growing more powerful. Japan also brought about its destruction like the other nations with extreme military nationalism. Problems created by the First World War led the world towards a second worldwide conflict. Humanity had to face another world war, longer in span, larger in scale, and much more disastrous in effects than the first one. Commencing on 1st September 1939, it continued up to 14th August 1945. Instead of resisting Hitler's aggressive policies, England tried to appease him. England also hoped that a powerful Hitler would direct his military might against Soviet Russia and the resulting conflict would destroy them both. The hope was belied. Immediately after Germany attacked Poland, England and France declared war against Germany on 3rd September 1939. On 7 December 1941, Japan launched an air attack on Pearl Harbor, the Pacific naval base of America. The next day, US declared war on Japan, followed by England and France. The World War that continued for 6 years was fought in 3 continents on land, air and sea. World situation changed rapidly after 1930. Economic depression led to the decline of the world trade. It resulted in political instability and revival of dictatorship and militarism in some countries. The League of Nations remained a passive spectator to deteriorating world peace. Hitler committed suicide on 7th March 1945 and Germany surrendered to the Allies. With this, the war in Europe ended. Japan was still fighting. American offensive against Japan began by mid-1942. American army reached near Japan in the early months of 1945 and America dropped an atom bomb on Hiroshima on 6th August and another on Nagasaki 3 days later. More than 1 lakh people perished within minutes. Paralyzed Japan was forced to surrender on 14 August 1945. This dreadful destruction brought the Second World War to an end. The effects of World War II. The Second World War caused unprecedented loss of human life and material loss as well. During the 6 years war of its duration, almost 15 million soldiers and equal number of civilians were killed. Material and financial losses were incomprehensible. Hence, the need for maintaining world peace was acutely felt. It gave birth to the UNO and the USA, which had refused to join the League of Nations in 1920, took initiative in founding the World Peace Organization. There were 2 exceptions to the general economic debility of warring nations. They were USA and USSR. They emerged as superpowers in the post-war period.